In America, we need a commander-in-chief who has respect for the men and women who serve under the authority of our president. And, as we know, everyone aspiring to the highest office in this land claims they really do care for those who put their lives on the line every day. We're being subjected to a daily torrent of ads and sound bites full of promises. But rather than fall for slick campaign commercials, there's a better indicator of a candidate's character. As Ben Franklin put it, actions speak louder than words. Now, a former uniformed Secret Service officer has come forward and described the extraordinary challenges of protecting President and Mrs. Clinton. To corroborate his shocking accounts of how Hillary Clinton abused, even humiliated, those who had to work around her, our Frontlines team contacted other eyewitnesses. What we learned was even worse than what we originally thought.
I started my career in federal law enforcement. I started with the 4 years in the Air Force, and then eventually I got hired by the Secret Service Uniform Division. Started working at the White House almost right away in 1991, the summer of 1991. The president at the time was President George Herbert Walker Bush. And then I was there for the whole 8 years that President Bill Clinton was there. One of my claims to fame, unfortunately, is I was the first Secret Service Uniform Division employee to be compelled against the president to testify in a criminal case. I was subpoenaed by the Justice Department 6 times. And eventually, I was forced to testify by Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist. He tried to deny that they were ever in the same room together alone. That put the burden on myself and the other officers, because that's what they came after us for.
As I walked up towards the open door, I could see the inner door was open. And then I heard her voice, and, the first thought in my mind was, what the heck is she doing in there?
They knew we could tell them the truth. And when they knew we would tell them the truth. Well, she stood right beside him, and by that time, she had to know that, or at least suspect that it wasn't true, but she let him go and say that, I did not have sex with that woman, or however hell he said it.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
All this could have been stopped by one person, being a man, the president, stepping up and saying, I did do it. I'm wrong, I'm sorry, I'm going forward and try to be better. That's not what happened. This long thing got drawn out. All these Secret Service employees got sucked into it.
The question is, if Monica Lewinsky says that while you were in the Oval Office area, you touched her breast, would she be lying?
That is not my recollection. My recollection is that I did not have sexual relations with Ms. Lewinsky, and I'm staying on my former statement about that.
When people want to criticize me for coming out and telling my story, I'd like to remind them where it started. It started with a president having an affair, a bizarre affair with a 22-year-old intern and refusing to come clean on it. And nobody ever thinks about all the damage that was done to the rest of the people that were involved in it.
It's always been the understanding that Secret Service agents do not reveal what they see behind the scenes. But in the case of Hillary Clinton, she was so nasty, and still is so nasty, to the agents on her detail, that being assigned to her detail is considered a form of punishment.
As time went by, it became clear that that was true. And I saw a couple examples of why they thought it was a form of punishment. One day I was on the south lawn of the White House talking to a friend of mine on post as I was going back to post, and we heard a radio call. The First Lady was moving towards the south lawn, and there she was. She came out, she was in jogging clothes and a baseball cap, and she was clearly angry about something. She was throwing her hands around and yelling and cussing, and there was no protection with her. There was no agents. And, the officer there went right over the radio, and the control center came right back over the radio and said, be advised, her detail knows they're coming. So I look up, and here comes this agent, and he's in his suit, and he's got half a sandwich hanging out of his mouth, and he's throwing his arms up in the air like, here we go again, And, you just saw the anxiety on his face, like, why is this like this, And, she goes out of the gate, and these other agents show up. They have jogging clothes on. They run up, and they catch up to her. And as she's walking out of the gate, she says something like, I don't know why I need you guys with me, or something like that. And that is dangerous to herself, dangerous to those agents, and dangerous to the public. If you happen to be out there with your family and your kid goes, oh, that's the First Lady, and they start running at him, everybody is a threat until we know it's not. So, it endangers the public.
When she was in the White House, Hillary would tell military aides she did not want them to wear their uniforms. She just could not stand to see the uniform of the United States. She will actually tell them she doesn't want them to say hello to her. When she was in the White House and even at events, she will tell agents she doesn't want to even see them. They have to literally hide behind curtains or partitions when she's walking down the corridor.
I believe she does have disdain for the military and law enforcement in uniform. I certainly saw that almost in the very beginning. One morning, we were down in the break room, and this officer came down. He says, "Man, this is a weird day." And somebody said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I just walked by the First Lady and said hello, and she told me to go to hell." Myself and a sergeant there said, "Get used to that. She ain't fond of us." Another officer sitting there who was just as young as this guy, a junior guy, and he said, "That's nothing. About a month ago, I was walking by her on the West Colonnade, and I said good morning, and she said, F you." The guy that she told to go F himself, 3 years before, he'd been in the Army. He'd been in Somalia. Now, there was an incident there, and he won a Purple Heart. He was sniped, went between his body armor. He almost lost his life. Gets a job with the Secret Service, and 3 years later, the First Lady of the Commander-in-Chief that sent him there tells him to go F himself. You just can't explain that away. That's not normal behavior.
We go to great lengths to protect the dignity and the privacy of those that we're in charge with keeping alive. I don't think it's too much to ask that same kind of respect be visited back upon us.
And I have worked for years cutting through red tape and plowing down bureaucracy to try to help our sons and daughters, our returning veterans, get taken care of. And it's really important because, you know, when somebody signs up to serve our country, we sign up to serve them.
You know, when she tries to say good things about the military or, you know, and she tries to give these lines of how much she respects them, it's not the way she acts.
People like Hillary talk about caring about little people. How much can they care about them when it comes to policy if they can't treat the people who are helping them with decency? It's a tremendous direct line to what they would do as president.
If you're like that all the time, if you're like that on camera and in public, okay, that's honest at least. This is where I say she's like two different people. How many times in the last year have you heard her party say, oh, well, you know, we're doing a little rebooting, trying to make the First Lady a little bit nicer or whatever. What is that? Either you're a good person or a decent person, or you are who you are. Humans aren't computers. You don't change the software. You're the personality you are.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles.
When I heard her say that, I laughed out loud. First of all, if they had landed like that, we'd have heard it. I'd have known about it. When they landed, the door opened up, the Secret Service got off, she got off, there was kids there, they handed them flowers. What sounds better is to tell that story. You know, it's not enough that I'm First Lady going over here, now I have to make it look like I'm tough. It's ridiculous. And more important than her lying is watch how they try to fix it. Oh, well, I misspoke.
I made a mistake in describing it.
You know what, my staffer distracted me, or I mixed it up with another time. No, there was no other time when you were shot at. That's not the way it happened. So when I heard about the email scandal and I heard Mrs. Clinton's first statement, I knew exactly how it was gonna go. I did nothing wrong.
The laws and regulations in effect when I was Secretary of State allowed me to use my email for work.
Then it goes to, well, everybody else did it.
Others had done it, according to the State Department.
Then it was, one thing I am sure of, there was no classified information.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material.
110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined by the owning agency to contain classified information at the time they were sent or received.
We're talking about life and death. We're talking about the ability for husbands to go home to their wives, for dads to go home for their children. We owe the men and women that are out there protecting our nation every day, we owe them the utmost in security regarding protecting classified information, because their lives depend on it.
It had numerous safeguards. It was on property guarded by the Secret Service, and there were no security breaches.
All of these emails were housed on unclassified personal servers, not even supported by full-time security staff, like those found at agencies and departments of the United States government, or even with a commercial email service like Gmail. We do assess that hostile actors gained access to the private commercial email accounts of people with whom Secretary Clinton was in regular contact from her personal account.
Handling classified information with gross negligence is a felony. That's all. There's no business about intent. There's no business about whether it's stamped or not. It's simply a violation of federal law. Anybody who's ever had a classified clearance understands that very well.
Any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position, or in the position of those with whom she was corresponding about those matters, should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
I did it for convenience, and I, now looking back, think that it might have been smarter to have those two devices from the very beginning.
The men and women of the Secret Service, they're going to perform and do their duties with the same intensity and professionalism, regardless of which party wins the White House coming up in this election. I would hope that whoever wins the White House in November would afford them the dignity and the respect and honor that they so richly deserve.
When we elect a president, we should look at character and we should look at track record. The FBI teaches new agents at Quantico that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
I'm not the first person in the Secret Service to tell the stories, but I'm one of the first to come out and tell the truth like this. And I'm putting my face on it. I'm not going to hide behind another writer. People that support it will say, oh, well, you know, if that was a man that did that, you wouldn't say anything. No, I would. And if it was a Republican, it would have appalled me too. And I'd still be telling this story. Listen, I'm not telling anybody not to vote for her. Here's what I'm telling you. Get educated. If you're very young, the only thing you know about the Clintons is not really the facts. Study up and then vote your conscience.
If these allegations are true, we need to ask ourselves if this is the kind of behavior we want in the White House. Subjecting selfless public servants to unconscionable outbursts and abuse like these observers describe ought to be beneath anyone in authority. If we want America to be great, shouldn't we first demand that our leaders be good? For Frontlines on NRA News, I'm Oliver North.